Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 525. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com. My guest today is Amos J. Landon, an indie author who writes two very different lanes. And what connects them is a real affection for characters who feel like they've got dirt on their shoes and something to prove. On one side, Amos writes middle grade fantasy adventures, including Fledgling, the first books in his Dragon's Emperor series, where a kid named Ash learns he isn't just the new kid, he actually is a dragon with dragon hunters closing in and new friends trying to keep him alive long enough to understand what he is. On the other side, he's just released a new women's fiction novel, Wayward Place, pitched as a great summer read and built around that quietly huge idea sometimes home isn't what you expected. So, this is a conversation about writing across genres, building series momentum, and why some stories show up as dragons and castles, and others show up as real life, asking you to reimagine what home is supposed to mean. Amos, I am excited for this conversation.
Me too, Barney. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, before we get into it, so for listeners meeting you for the first time, how do you describe what you write in a few sentences?
I like to say I write fantastical fiction.
Okay.
I like a touch of magic in everything, and everything I write is based out of New England.
So, you're writing both middle grade fantasy and women's fiction. What does each
Yeah.
lane let you say differently?
I love writing for kids because there are future readers. And if a kid can find the right book, they will become an adult reader. So I swear it's just the right book. That's all it takes. And as for women's fiction, I like connection. And a good portion of women's fiction is connections between people. So yeah, I like connection. I create connection in my kids' books and in my women's fiction.
And do you switch genres to rest one part of your brain, or do you do it to challenge another part of your brain?
To give myself a palate
Yeah.
cleanser. When you write for kids, you have to be a lot more aware of what you're telling them. You have to think about it as though you're a kid, and is this going to be too scary? Is this going to be too big? How can I make this something they can understand? And when you write for adults, you can get a little more into the flow of real
Right.
life.
So, what's the biggest surprise you've learned by writing for both kids and adults?
The biggest, I've learned that I love the idea of kids reading my books more than anybody else. I love the idea of kids reading my books. I want to be that person who opens them up into exciting new ideas.
And so, so let's talking about Wayward Place. That that
Yep.
that tagline, sometimes home isn't what you expected. Where did that idea come from?
I read a book, and Dorothy Gilman, Fool's Folly, about a man who is taking care of a house, and there ends up being people already living there. And with Wayward Place, it kind of stimulated this idea of how home can look so different for one person than it does for another. I'm really big on found family. And I was like, okay, if I had a house, this house with people already living in it, what will that look like? Who will those people be? And who's going to find that place and find their home in an unexpected situation?
Okay. And What kind of reader do you imagine picking this up on a summer weekend?
Usually a woman, but I do know obviously men do like connection as well. Somebody who's not looking for a romance in particular, somebody who's really looking for friendship and um, a deep connection with people they've just met, people they haven't known very long.
And what what theme keeps showing up in your adult work, whether you mean to or not?
In my adult
Yeah.
work, well, it shows up in both my adult and my kids' fiction, and that is found family. I feel like we don't all fit in with the people we were born to, and even those of us who do find their people outside of that at some point. And I think it's something that's really we can really relate to and really connect with.
What's what do you hope a reader feels when they finish the Wayward Place?
Hope, hope that everything can be overcome in some way or another, whether it's a by grit or a change of mindset. Everything can be overcome.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your Dragon Emperor series. Uh,
Yes,
Ash thinks he's just the new kid, then learns he's a dragon. Um,
he's
why
actually a dragon
why
in
does that
human
how
form.
so what does that reveal symbolize, or what does that reveal hit so hard?
That's a really good question. he he's very closed off. He's very introverted, and he had his friends back home, and here he is. It's already bad enough to be the new kid, and he discovers he's not even human. He's adopted. He finds out all these huge things, and I think that goes a lot along very well with that point in the child's life where they're heading into adolescence, and they start to learn things that may not be quite that huge, but they still feel huge. Um, so it's just like, oh my god, everything is going
Mm.
wrong. I will never fit in. I don't belong anywhere. Um, I think most kids can really feel that.
Now, what makes Ash when you wrote Ash, what makes Ash lovable as a protagonist?
He's a little bit of a coward. He wears his fear pretty openly, and I think we're always trying to find a way to hide the fact that we're afraid. And instead, he gets the brave sidekick, so he gets to just be who he is. He doesn't have to try to be something he's not. Um, and I think that and the fact that he's just really
Mm.
kind makes him lovable.
And talk a little bit about the dragon hunters. What do they represent beyond just being bad guys?
The Order of Saint Theodore um, represents it represents that fear of the unknown, and kind of gives it a physical person, a physical manifestation, so that kids can process it.
Mm, right. And you mentioned the sidekick. So who's the sidekick or friend that you're most proud of writing for Ash?
Sid Harper, she's snarky and you know kind of a tough little thing, despite the fact that she's 4 feet tall, and she's a little she's can be a little mean sometimes, but she doesn't really mean it badly. She as a dragon, having grown up as a dragon, she grew up basically invisible. There's a spell cast on young dragons so that they just don't get noticed, to make them less likely to be captured. So she hasn't had as much interaction as she would have liked. And here's this kid, and she recognizes that he's a dragon, and then she figures out that he has no idea that he's a dragon. So she has a little fun with that.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. So what's your rule then for writing danger in middle grade novels that makes it stay intense but not overwhelming?
I try to write the emotions around it and not put anything actively gory or anything like that. And I also make sure the kid comes out okay in the end, or more or less okay. One of the things that Fledgling deals with is that Ash goes through something really, really terrifying, and when he comes out the other end, he is different. He does have more fear, and whatnot, that he has to now learn how to contend with. So I try to be real. I try not to assume kids can't handle it, but I do keep it, you know, um, non-bloody.
Right. But you also there's a second book in the series, Heir.
Heir, yes.
So
He
for our listeners out there, Heir is Heir, not AIR. So just
correct.
to
Yes.
clarify for our listeners out there. Yeah.
Yes, that came out April
And
1st.
okay. And Ash is in an ancient castle filled with dragons. Why was that the next stage of his story?
Because one of the things we learn in Fledgling is that Ash is not only a dragon, he is the long lost heir to the throne of dragonkind. And after trying to live in the human world, but it being too dangerous, they end up transporting him to the palace where the dragon royals historically lived and ruled from. So here he is, stuck in 15th century clothing, including the pointy shoes and tights, and trying to learn how to live among dragons, who are all in human form, um, and trying to figure out how he is supposed to be an emperor when he is 13 years old. He's 11 in the first book and 13 in the second.
So the order is still after him in Heir. So what keeps the pressure on in book two then?
There is basically a mole. There is somebody in the palace who is working with the order, and nobody expects that because there are no humans in the palace, which means there's a dragon working with the order of Saint Theodore.
Hmm. So someone on the inside, that's a really that's a good juicy angle. So how do you kind of build suspicion without confusing younger readers?
I try to make sure that clues are pretty straightforward without being right right there. It's like it's there, but you have to kind of listen for it.
Okay.
And when it comes time for things to start being revealed, there is more obvious um, discussion about it among the characters.
Hmm. So what would you say is the biggest emotional shift for Ash between book one and book two?
book one, he is learning all about fledging, the act of fledging, which happens when you're 11, um, when you're a dragon, and it comes with all kinds of things that can be kind of associated with a form of puberty. Like they get pointy toenails, and it gets really hot in here. And sometimes they shed like molt. There's, so like he's dealing with all these weird bodily things, um, and he's just trying to get through. And of course, the order is after him, so he's also trying to live, survive all of that. In book two, he feels he's in a safe place. He is familiar with morphing from human to dragon form and what that means. He's more familiar with his magic, and now he has to learn a little bit of responsibility, but also he's learning a lot of secrets, and it's exciting, but it's also kind of terrifying, and he can't share them with his best friend. So he has to learn boundaries.
Hmm. So how do you track like your world rules and continuity across the series? Like, do you have like notes? You have spreadsheets? Do you have like a like a series Bible that you kind of refer to?
I do have a series Bible. I have a binder, kind of
Okay.
very, very old school, with each character and their magic abilities, what they look like, their personalities. Um, I find photos online of this kind of looks like my character and whatever. And I have that on there. I have the rules of magic, for the dragons, because magic is only for dragons in my particular world, and each type of dragon has specific magical capabilities and limitations.
Hmm.
Except for Ash, he's got everything everybody else can do.
Huh. What's the best world building detail that you've created that most readers probably won't consciously notice?
I write my characters first. I figure out who they are first, and that leads me to things like what kind of magic everybody has and whatnot. That leads me to things like, hey, not all dragon hordes are gold. you know, um, One of Sid's dads has a dragon horde that is all games that date
Oh,
back
cool.
2,000 years. Um, a lot of ums in there.
That that's cool because everybody just assumes that dragons. Yeah, dragons. Yeah,
It's all
hoard
gold
gold. Yeah.
and jewels and whatnot. And that's what Ash originally finds when he does find his mother's hoard. And he's really surprised to learn that they're whatever the dragon likes.
Huh. Okay, that's pretty cool. I like that. And so how do you decide when to explain magic and when do you let it stay mysterious?
You have to give people a basis for your magic. Um, they need to understand that there is magic and that there's going to be things happening, and you've got to be consistent. Um, but in these particular books, the magic kind of comes little by little because of where Ash is coming from. So I don't tell everything early on. We He discovers things along with the reader.
Hmm. And what's the hardest part uh, about being a writer for you? Is it the writing part? Is the revision? Is it packaging, visibility? What's the hardest part about being a writer right now? You think?
The hardest part for me is editing. I
Mm.
have a brain injury, so my memory is not always what I would like it to be. So when I edit, it takes me a little bit longer. Um, I have to make notes. I have to be able to remember, details from one chapter, multiple chapters later. So there oftentimes I'm going, through this chapter, and then I remember, oh, there's something about that in chapter 27, and I have to go find that and make sure they line up. So I end up doing a lot of back and forth that other people don't necessarily have to do. So editing for me is has been the hardest part, although marketing is no fun either.
Mm. And what would you say then is what's one small practice that made your work noticeably better as you were writing over the years?
Reading as a writer, not
Mm.
just as a reader. Reading to see how other people say things, do things, how they put pieces together. Um, I've been reading since I was 3 years old. I was able to read at 3 years old, and I've read everything put in front of me my whole life, no matter what, whether it was appropriate or not. It didn't matter. Mom's like, "Why are you reading that romance novel? You're 8." I'm like, "Because I ran out of books." So, but to learn to read as a writer was the biggest help. To really look at it as a study in how to write.
Right. And so if you could hand a new reader one book to start with, Wayward Place or Fledgling, which do you pick?
It would depend on if they were 11 years old or 30 years old, really. Um, I love Fledgling.
Yeah.
I love Fledgling. I think it's fun, and I think anybody can enjoy it. Um, Wayward Place does have a special place in my heart because I really became attached to those characters and their stories. It could be hard. There's also The Girl, the Pig, and the Accidental Demon. That was my first book, and that's a little weird. It's a little bit weirder, but I don't know. I my writing's gotten better since then, so I probably wouldn't recommend that one. But at the same time, it was so much fun to write. 13-year-old with a job working for a pig in a jar.
That sounds interesting. Tell us a little bit more about that, Amos. Now I'm
Uh,
really.
Juju Jones is a an orphan being raised by her butler. Her parents were very wealthy. They had an anchovy uh, business. It's a little weird. And she's trying to find something to do. She's just bored. She doesn't have any friends or whatever. She's a little odd. And she goes to this vintage store, and she finds a pig in a jar who's talking to her. And she's like, "I'm here for an interview," and he's like, "Yeah, that's with me." She decided she wanted to go get a job, and she ends up buying him, and taking him home with her and housing him, and she's his personal assistant. So he runs a business called oh dear, awful, AWFL. It's it's about what they do is they take the formerly living, like taxidermied animals and whatnot, and they find them new homes or occupations. So, like, there were eyeballs in a jar. They found at a place at an optometrist's office. Um, a taxidermied beaver, they got it, set up at a Bass Pro Shops type of thing. And they've got an angry retired science teacher after the pig in the jar, who's Mr. Squigglesworth, because he believes Mr. Squigglesworth escaped years ago, and that is why he had been forcibly retired now.
Mm.
So he's the bad guy, who turns out to be not so bad, just a little weird. But it's this whole adventure. They go traveling. They meet, a country music band, a lady who works for a Mary Kay type of program, all kinds of people who all come to the rescue when Mr. Squigglesworth gets kidnapped.
Hmm.
It's fun. I should rewrite it so the writing's better. I really should. Nobody liked it. People who did, people were like, "This is a little weird." I shouldn't say nobody. The kids who read it liked it. Any adults who tried to give it a try, they were like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "Oh my, maybe this is a little too weird for a first book. I don't know."
This is great. So as we mentioned earlier, Fledgling and Heir are are available now
on
uh,
Amazon. Yes.
on Amazon. And where can people find Wayward Place?
Wayward Place, I went through a different program, so you can get the ebook on Kobo, Apple, a bunch of different ones. Um, and the paperback is available on Amazon, but not the ebook.
Okay, all right. Um, Excellent. So, Amos, when is the third book of the series coming out?
The plan is for November 1st, but I am struggling a little bit with this one. Wanting to, because it's the last book in the series. So it may be more like the beginning of 2027, but I'm still looking to get it out November 1st in time for Christmas.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much, Amos. I had a great time chatting.
Yes, this was wonderful. Thank you so much.